No, I don't think we can get Bouton to do it, and you can't get me to do it either. I'm Hans Henrich Hock. I'm a professor emeritus at the University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign, out in the prairie. It's a field which has been around for a long time. Historical linguistics at least goes back to the early 19th century. It has a long tradition of doing work, but there are lots of things which approaching issues from a modern theoretical perspective can be helpful and bring new insights. And understanding how languages change gives you some aspect of what makes human beings human, right? Why, for instance, why do languages change? Right? When I teach a class in the United States for undergraduates in the state of Illinois, most of our students come from the Chicago area. And so I get them interested by saying, okay, who's from Chicago? Lots of hands go up. Now, tell me, who's from Chicago? Different pronunciation. Most hands go up too. But they kind of smile. They know this is not really quite standard. And who's from Chicago? One or two hands maybe go up. They're from the inner city. Basically, what happened was a change took place originally in a small subgroup of white working class males. It was in the city of Chicago, basically stereotyped as white working class male and not to be imitated. But outside it was reinterpreted as a sign of the big city. And so that's where the people who will say Chicago, or have heard it at least around them, they live not in Chicago itself, but on the outside. Inside, the people who don't want to be caught dead speaking like that might in fact put on Chicago. So right there you see something which shows that language changes. It also gives you some idea of motivation, namely that it's basically an issue of groups, social groups. And so that again makes it interesting, because for some types of change at least, then you can start thinking what kind of social circumstances could have given rise to these in the past. So that's something too. Then if you do what I do too in European linguistics, we reconstruct the earlier language, forms of the language and lexicon, vocabulary of the language. But through the lexicon you can open the door on the culture. So if they had a word for cow, it's not likely that they didn't have cows. They must have had cows, right? Lots of people had cows at the rough time depths of the ancestral language, but they also had a word for horse. And horses, we know, were domesticated only somewhere between 4,000 and 3,500 BC. And they were domesticated in the steppe area from eastern Ukraine into Kazakhstan. So we can now pinpoint where the speakers of Indo-European must have been at what time, because they have this word meaning horse, and it is the domesticated horse. So they must have either domesticated themselves or took it over from somebody else, but they spread it. And so that then gives you outside applications. So they're not always without controversy, because they have impact on how people conceptualize prehistory. And if you have people talking about prehistory, you very quickly have an argument, because lots of people have different views of what prehistory should be like. And so, for instance, at some previous instances of this conference, Camille Hammonds and I organized workshops on the issue of ideology in historical linguistics, where people then either deny the method of doing historical comparative linguistics because it yields results they don't like, or they make up their own story, or they try to exploit particular angles which are controversial for their own goals. And so in essence then, as a historical linguist, knows his or her stuff, you can contribute to these issues and say, okay, we have to distinguish between history and alternative history. And you know what's meant by alternative history? Fake news. It's well known from the United States, right? And coming here too. Years back, at the time of the Vietnam War, what was his name? I forget the name. He had been the president of the Linguistic Society of America. He wrote a paper in Language, the journal, Truth is a Linguistic Question, where he tries to expose the lies which were fabricated by the American government to justify the Vietnam War. That's fine, but you can look at other groups too, which likewise don't tell the truth or massage the truth, right? And what people tend to do is just look at it selectively, and there's nothing in the issue of language itself which tells you this is a lie, this is not. You make those judgments on other grounds. You can say, okay, they use a particular way of covering up the truth by using language creatively, but lots of people use language creatively for things that we approve of, right? And so that's often ignored. And so it's ultimately something where I don't think we can contribute anything as linguists, but that's where we have to act as human beings, as citizens and so forth. And in the United States, it means you have to vote. When I retired, my position and my specialization was not filled again. It's a field in which there aren't as many students because you have to control more than one language to talk about language history and so forth. And so what you have now is largely a turn toward either computationally oriented linguistics, and we have in fact a joint undergraduate major now in computer science and linguistics, combining the two things and taking the full complement of courses in both areas. So that's one thing where people now get money for new positions. The other thing where you can get something is aspects of applied linguistics because of the vast demand for English as a second language. So in essence, English as a second language and computational approaches to linguistics or linguistic approaches to computation, these are the growth areas, and that's where the money goes. And it's a pity because what is not really taking place is that you don't get the universities all getting together and saying, okay, we can't all of us do everything, but you do this, you do that, to make sure that the field doesn't die. This is done without coordination, and so whole fields or subfields can be eliminated simply because you don't fill the positions anymore because other things are considered to be more important. Interestingly, actually, it's people in the natural sciences who appreciate this kind of work much more than the people in the humanities and the social sciences. Because for them, that is something, they say you have to have a broad mind. And that means you have to be exposed to different ideas. And to be just only specialized in one area is not going to make you into a productive researcher. You have to be able to think of alternatives, and you often get them by looking at some other field and getting experience in some other field. And I think that's, so in essence, the pressure there is rather the fact that we are in a different, universities have different colleges, we are in a different college from engineering, and so the support which we might get otherwise, we don't get because we are governed by the people who are largely humanities, critical theory and such things, and they don't think much of linguistics, and social sciences, which are also have a strong tendency now to go to critical theory and so forth. And so, yeah, we're kind of in that sense isolated. Yeah, we would be much better off in a scientifically oriented college.